Welcome in, folks. This is your captain, the Deaf Rider, entering my captain's log for January the 18th in the year 20,325. This is log entry number 3123. I am still the last human being alive, floating through the galaxy with my crew. And it occurred to me that as the last human being alive, I have a responsibility to see that human culture doesn't die out. So as of today, I'm going to be broadcasting human culture in the form of poetry out to the galaxy, in the hope that that there will be an audience for it out there. A lot of human culture has made it out into the galaxy. We've been broadcasting via radio waves into the galaxy for hundreds of years before the Earth was destroyed. So my alien listeners and viewers will already be fairly familiar with human beings. Mainly with our violence and tendency to blow things up. But I'm hoping that this will demonstrate something else, something more of the nobility and artistry of my species. So, let's begin.
Hello, I am X-37, the artificial intelligence. It's my job to orient you to life aboard the pentameter. Ever since the Earth blew up, we have been adrift in our ship, the pentameter, where we work to share culture with the world. But here in my lab, I get to engage in experiments. This is experiment number 49, variation number 361. I have been attempting to use my planet-sized intellect to develop a brand new deodorant from the remains of insect husks. So far, I have not been terribly successful. This attempt will include the leprosy virus, to see if that can counteract the radiation that was added during attempt number 360. Do I think this will work? Probably not. Uh-oh, these readings don't look good.
What's happened here? That AI, I told it to clean the place up. It promised me it had. Well, we're about to go live. What am I going to do? I know. I will see if I can hide this mess behind all the panels. There we go. That's better. We've got the panels in place. Hopefully nobody will notice. X-37, can you please make your way into the lab?
You bellowed, fearless leader?
That's right, I did. I need you to make sure that this is all cleaned up as quickly as possible later. Do you understand?
Yes, fearless leader. I understand.
All right, we're about to go live. Can you count me in?
I think you'll find that you are already.
No, just count me in, okay?
Yes, sir. 3, 2, 1. Beep.
Did you just say beep?
No, that was the system coming online.
Okay. Welcome in, everybody, to another Poetry by Request. I hope you're all having a good day out there in the galaxy, regardless of your race or species. I'm looking forward to today. We have a lot of great poems to cover and get into. As usual, we are going to begin with our invitational poem to open proceedings. So, switching screens now to our invitational poem. Once I find it, of course. Welcome, everybody, to our newest episode. Poetry by Request, recitals by me, the deaf writer. And our first poem is our official, unofficial invitation to dinner, an original poem by me, inviting you to join me in some poetry today. It occurred to me that poetry and food is something that should be enjoyed and savoured with some wine. And so I ask you out to dine with friends, of course, and I, your host, will beg your company the most. For were you to absent yourself, there's not enough of worldly wealth to compensate me for the grief of losing your good company. And that was the invitation to dinner. Our first poem for the day, and our list is live. So feel free to make a poetry request while we're doing our first poem of the day. We'll work our way back to the beginning of the list. I should mention that today our featured poet is A.A. Milne. A.A. Milne is our featured poet today, so we will be beginning today's poetry with the poem Bad Sir Brian Botany. Please, while the poem's being recited, feel free to click on the link in the chat that will take you to our poetry list, where you can request any of the 120 odd poems that we have there. And if you happen to be in the oh, hello, Frog111222. Welcome in, and I hope that you're having a good time on this Saturday morning, wherever you happen to be in space. I've just read his book, The Red House. Oh, The Red House. A. Milne, of course. Wonderful stuff. You'll have to tell us what the book was like. I haven't read The Red House. But thank you for commenting and coming in, and please feel free to add a few poems to the request list. Okie doke. We will now jump back in and begin the first poem on today's list, Bad Sir Brian, Botany. Bad Sir Brian, Botany by A. Milne. Sir Brian had a battle axe with great big knobs on. He went among the villagers and blipped them on the head. On Wednesday and on Saturday, but mostly on the latter day, he called on all the cottagers, and this is what he said. I am Sir Brian. Tingling. I am Sir Brian. Rat-tat. I am Sir Brian, as bold as a lion. Take that, and that, and that. Sir Brian had a pair of boots with great big spurs on, a fighting pair of which he was particularly fond. On Tuesday and on Friday, just to make the street look tidy, he'd collect the passing villagers and kick them in the pond. I am Sir Brian! Splash! I am Sir Brian! Splosh! I am Sir Brian, as bold as a lion. Is anyone else for a wash? Sir Brian woke one morning and he couldn't find his battle axe. He walked into the village in his second pair of boots. He had gone 100 paces when the street was full of faces, and the villagers were round him with ironical salutes. You are Sir Brian? Indeed. You are Sir Brian. Dear, dear. You are Sir Brian, as bold as a lion. Delighted to meet you here. Sir Brian went a journey and he found a lot of duckweed. They pulled him out and dried him, and they blipped him on the head. They took him by the breeches and they hurled him into ditches, and they pushed him under waterfalls. And this is what they said. You are Sir Brian? Don't laugh. You are Sir Brian? Don't cry. You are Sir Brian, as bold as a lion. Sir Brian the lion. Goodbye. Sir Brian struggled home again and chopped up his battle axe. Sir Brian took his fighting boots and threw them in the fire. He's quite a different person now he hasn't got his spurs on, and he goes about the village as B. Botany, Esquire. I am Sir Brian. Oh, no. I am Sir Brian. Who's he? I haven't got any title. I'm Botany. Plain Mr. Botany B. And that was Bad Sir Brian Botany by our featured poet, A. Milne. So, what's been happening in the chat? Who's arrived? Who's saying hello? I've just read the book Red House by A. Milne. Says Frog 111222. He wrote many books, and this one was a murder mystery. Oh, that sounds interesting. I didn't realise that he had written much outside of the Winnie the Pooh stories and the poetry, which of course is what he was most famous for. Thank you for that little anecdote. Let's see, what do we have in our list today? We probably should empty some of the ones that have been done. So we'll take care of those. And our next poem is Forgiveness by Alexander Beetle. Before we get too much further, I should probably make some things known to anybody that happens to be a visitor here. There are some rules around our I should also let you know that the talking got muted. I was just reading through the rules out loud. I imagine that the talking will probably get muted when I show the commands as well. That's sad. I didn't quite get everything set up the way I wanted in time. But if you type in !W commands, all the commands that you can use in chat to interact with other people will appear in the chat. So that's there. I might ask Timothy to type that in, and there they are. Commands include. And to use our custom commands, you add a W in front. So !W applause, !W on fire, !W party, !W cool, etc. So hopefully you can enjoy yourselves with some of those commands. There are also commands that affect the avatars that you can see wandering around the bottom of the screen that will allow you to drop bombs and engage in other fun things. Well, there goes one of the bombs now, blowing Timothy up. Okay, so let's get on with our next poem for the morning. So our next poem is Forgiveness, otherwise known as Alexander Beetle. And for some reason, did I load the wrong one? For some reason, I can't get the... I was sure it was there. Oh no, there it is. Forgiveness, Alexander Beetle. I thought I'd lost it. There we go. Forgiveness by Alexander Beetle. By Alexander Beetle. I'm a bit muddled today. I was up very late last night trying to get all of this ready for this morning, and some of my word usements aren't very grammar as a result. Here we go. Forgiveness, Alexander Beetle by A. Milne. I found a little beetle, so that Beetle was his name, and I called him Alexander, and he answered just the same. I put him in a matchbox, and I kept him all the day. And Nanny let my beetle out. Yes, Nanny let my beetle out. She went and let my beetle out, and Beetle ran away. She said she didn't mean it, and I never said she did. She said she wanted matches, and she just took off the lid. She said that she was sorry, but it's difficult to catch an excited sort of beetle you've mistaken for a match. She said that she was sorry, and I really mustn't mind, as there's lots and lots of beetles which she's certain we could find if we looked about the garden for the holes where beetles hid. And we'd get another matchbox and write Beetle on the lid. We went to all the places which a beetle might be near, and we made the sort of noises which a beetle likes to hear. And I saw a kind of something, and I gave a sort of shout. A beetle house, and Alexander Beetle coming out. It was Alexander Beetle, I'm as certain as can be, and he had a sort of look as if he thought it must be me, and he had a sort of look as if he thought he ought to say, I'm very, very sorry that I tried to run away. And Nanny's very sorry too, for you know what she did, and she's writing Alexander very blackly on the lid. So Nan and me are friends because it's difficult to catch an excited Alexander you've mistaken for a match. And that was Alexander Beetle, requested by Tim Tam and written by A. Milne. And here we are, back in the chat. Let's see what we've got happening. Well, Tim Tam, you're on fire today, requesting poems. We're seeing a few poems pop up from Tim Tam. A. Milne poems, which is appropriate given that today he is our featured poet. But please feel free, if you're visiting or lurking, to request any of the poems in our poetry list, or request poems in general. I have a standing promise that if somebody requests a poem, I will attempt, if it's not in the list, to add it for the following week. So please jump in, participate in our Poetry by Request show. All right. Let's see. Our next request is Puppy and I. Puppy and I by A. Milne. Puppy and I, written in 1927 by A. Milne. I met a man as I went walking. We got talking, man and I. Where are you going to, man? I said. I said to the man as he went by. Down to the village to get some bread. Will you come with me? No, not I. I met a horse as I went walking. We got talking, horse and I. Where are you going to, horse, today? I said to the horse as he went by. Down to the village to get some hay. Will you come with me? No, not I. I met a woman as I went walking. We got talking, woman and I. Where are you going to, woman, so early? I said to the woman as she went by. Down to the village to get some barley. Will you come with me? No, not I. I met some rabbits as I went walking. We got talking, rabbits and I. Where are you going in your brown fur coats? I said to the rabbits as they went by. Down to the village to get some oats. Will you come with us? No, not I. I met a puppy as I went walking. We got talking, puppy and I. Where are you going this nice fine day? I said to the puppy as he went by. Up to the hills to roll and play. I'll come with you, puppy, said I. And that was Puppy and I by A. Milne. Another poem for Tim Tam. Well, the poem list has one more poem in it. Please feel free to add more as the morning progresses. I'm sure there are lots of poems that members of different species might be interested to hear. Little bits of Earth culture beamed out to the galaxy.
Hello? I thought I'd interrupt you for a moment.
Oh yeah? What for?
Well, you know how you were talking about humor.
Yes?
I've been doing some research, and I have a joke.
Oh dear. This could be bad.
Here's my joke. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Teresa.
Teresa who?
Teresa Green.
Oh, that was bad. Bad, bad, bad. Let's move on, I think. The King's Breakfast is our next poem for the day. The King's Breakfast by A. Milne. The King's Breakfast, written in 1924 by A. Milne. The King asked the Queen, and the Queen asked the dairymaid, "Could we have some butter for the royal slice of bread?" The Queen asked the dairymaid said, "Certainly, I'll go and tell the cow now before she goes to bed." The dairymaid, she curtsied and went and told the Alderney, "Don't forget the butter for the royal slice of bread." The Alderney said sleepily, "You'd better tell His Majesty that many people nowadays like marmalade instead." The dairymaid said, "Fancy," and went to Her Majesty. She curtsied to the Queen and she turned a little red. "Excuse me, Your Majesty, for taking of the liberty, but marmalade is tasty if it's very thickly spread." The Queen said, "Oh," and went to His Majesty. "Talking of the butter for the royal slice of bread, many people think that marmalade is nicer. Would you like to try a little marmalade instead?" The King said, "Bother. And then he said, "Oh, dearie me." The king sobbed, "Oh, dearie me," and went back to bed. "Nobody," he whimpered, "could call me a fussy man. I only want a little bit of butter for my bread." The queen said, "There, there," and went to the dairymaid. The dairymaid said, "There, there," and went to the shed. The cow said, "There, there, I didn't really mean it. Here's milk for his porringer and butter for his bread." The queen took the butter and brought it to his majesty. The king said, "Butter, eh?" and bounced out of bed. "Nobody," he said as he kissed her tenderly. "Nobody," he said as he slid down the banisters. "Nobody, my darling, could call me a fussy man. But I do like a little bit of butter for my bread." And that was The King's Breakfast by A. Milne. I should just show off the little bit of art there in the bottom corner that I created. That's an original picture. Most of the art that accompanies the poems are original pictures by me, the deaf writer, and I try to add a few new ones every week. But this week I've been busy working on the new setup for the stream, which I hope that you're enjoying. What's our next poem on the list? Our next poem on the list is Sneezels by A. Milne. Well, this is definitely an A. Milne kind of a day. So, Sneezels it is. Sneezels by A. Milne, from written in 1927. And I might take a moment to show off the art there. That's my picture of one of the doctors rushing to Christopher Robin's side as he has come down with a case of the sneezels. Christopher Robin had weasels and sneezels. They bundled him into his bed. They gave him what goes with a cold in the nose and some more for a cold in the head. They wondered if weasels could turn into measles, if sneezels would turn into mumps. They examined his chest for a rash and the rest of his body for swellings and lumps. They sent for some doctors in sneezels and weasels to tell them what ought to be done. All sorts and conditions of famous physicians came hurrying round at a run. They all made a note of the state of his throat. They asked if he suffered from thirst. They asked if the sneezels came after the weasels or if the first sneezel came first. They said, if you teasel a sneezel or weasel, a measle may easily grow. But humour or pleasel, the weasel or sneezel, the measle will certainly go. They expounded the reasons for sneezels and weasels, the manner of measles when new. They said if he freezels in draughts and in breezels, then thiesels may even ensue. Christopher Robin got up in the morning, the sneezels had vanished away, and the look in his eye seemed to say to the sky, now how to amuse them today. And that was Sneasels by A. Milne, requested by Tim Tam. Thank you, Tim Tam, for that request. Oh, we've got another one there, halfway down. Tim Tam, you're working through the list, aren't you? That's fine. It's a good day for the list, but
Hello, deep thought here. The greatest intelligence in the universe. I would like to request a poem, please.
Oh, okay. Sure, you can break into my broadcast. What poem would you like to request?
I would like to request to an athlete dying young.
Okay, that's a great poem. For a bit of variation, I guess we can do that one. So before I do halfway down, I will do to an athlete dying young. This particular poem is by A.E. Housman. Oops, would help if I was in the right screen. This particular poem is by A.E. Housman, an original drawing there by me of Mr. Housman. And you can see there some art I prepared as well for this particular poem to represent an athlete and associate that athlete with death. Wasn't an easy thing to come up with a piece of art to go with this particular poem. The time you won your town the race, we chaired you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you shoulder high. Today, the road all runners run. Shoulder high we bring you home, and set you at your threshold down, townsman of a stiller town. Smart lad to slip betimes away from fields where glory does not stay, and early though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose. Eyes the shady night has shut cannot see the record cut, and silence sounds no worse than cheers after earth has stopped the tears. Now you will not swell the rout of lads that wore their honours out, runners whom renown outran, and the name died before the man. So set before its echoes fade the fleet foot on the sill of shade, and hold to the low lintel up the still defended challenge cup. And round that laurelled head will flock to gaze the strengthless dead, and find unwithered on its curls the garland briefer than a girl's. Well, that one was a bit glitched, wasn't it? I didn't quite pull that off for you, but deep thought. I hope that you enjoyed that particular poem. What's next? What's next indeed? What's next is Halfway Down, requested by Tim Tam. After that little change of pace that I kind of messed up a bit, but each time I do a poem, it's like I'm doing it for the first time. So, here we go with Halfway Down by the marvellous A. Milne. This one written in 1924. And with, again, some art that was prepared by me. Halfway down. Halfway down the stairs is a stair where I sit. There isn't any other stair quite like it. I'm not at the bottom, I'm not at the top. So this is the stair where I always stop. Halfway up the stairs isn't up, and it isn't down. It isn't in the nursery, and it isn't in the town. And all sorts of funny thoughts run round my head. It isn't really anywhere. It's somewhere else instead. And that was Halfway Down by A. Milne. So those are all the poems that we have had so far today. Maybe I'll take a turn myself and choose a poem to deliver. Since we're in a kids' poem sort of a mood today, let's go with the Trianti Wanti Gongolope. The Trianti Wanti Gongolope will be our next poem today. And please, if you haven't selected a poem today, make your requests known. Here is a picture of the marvellous C.J. Dennis, an Australian poet who wrote the Trianti Wanti Gongolope in 1921. And we also have some artwork, my attempt at drawing the Trianti Wanti Gongolope based on C.J. Dennis's description. There's a very funny insect that you do not often spy, and it isn't quite a spider, and it isn't quite a fly, and it's something like a beetle and a little like a bee, but nothing like a woolly grub that climbs upon a tree. Its name is quite a hard one, but you'll learn it soon, I hope. So try Trianti Wanti Gongolope. It lives on weeds and wattle gum and has a funny face. Its appetite is hearty and its manners a disgrace. When first you come upon it, it will give you quite a scare. But when you look for it again, you find it isn't there. And unless you call it softly, it will stay away and mope. So try Trianti Wanti Gongolope. It trembles if you tickle it or tread upon its toes. It's not an early riser, but it has a snobbish nose. If you sneer at it or scold it, it will scuttle off in shame. But it purrs, and purrs quite proudly, if you call it by its name, and offer it some sandwiches of sealing wax and soap. So try Trianti Wanti Gongolope. But of course you haven't seen it, and I truthfully confess that I haven't seen it either, and I don't know its address. For there isn't such an insect, though there really might have been if the trees and grass were purple and the sky was bottle green. It's just a little joke of mine which you'll forgive, I hope. So try Trianti Wanti Gongolope. And that was the Trianti Wanti Gongolope by C.J. Dennis, as chosen by me. let's have a look. What else do we have in our list today? Oh, look at that. We've got Buckingham Palace. Another A.A. Milne poem. We're really going to hit the A.A. Milne today hard. And that's appropriate. A.A. Milne is our featured poet today. So let's take a look at A.A. Milne while I have a quick look at what the time is. We've got plenty of time. So, Buckingham Palace by A.A. Milne. Buckingham Palace by A.A. Milne. Written in 1924. They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. Alice is marrying one of the guard. A soldier's life is terrible hard, said Alice. They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. We saw a guard in a sentry box. One of the sergeants looks after their socks, says Alice. They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. We looked for the king, but he never came. Well, God take care of him all the same, said Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. They've great big parties inside the grounds. I wouldn't be king for £100, said Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. A face looked out, but it wasn't the king's. He's much too busy assigning things, said Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. Do you think the king knows all about me? He's sure to, dear, but it's time for tea, said Alice. And that was Buckingham Palace by A.A. Milne, complete with a little bit of art by me of the guardsmen in front of Buckingham Palace. And let's return. See what else might be appearing in the list today. There is nothing in the list. Okay, well, while I think about what to choose.
Hello again. I thought I'd interrupt, since there's nothing in the list, to tell you another knock-knock joke.
Must you? I don't think I really want to hear it.
No, really, this one's great.
Okay, go ahead.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Will.
Will who?
Will these jokes ever end?
Oh, another awful knock-knock joke. I'm actually regretting telling you about Earth humour. Never mind. Let's see. I think we should go with another kids-style poem. So let's do The Goose by Alfred Lord Tennyson. And there we have oops. Only works if I'm on the right screen, doesn't it? There we go. There we have my illustration of Lord Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson, as well as my illustration of the goose that laid the golden eggs. So let's listen to The Goose by Alfred Lord Tennyson, written in 1842. I knew an old wife lean and poor, her rags scarce held together. There strode a stranger to the door, and it was windy weather. He held a goose upon his arm, he uttered rhyme and reason. Here, take the goose, and keep you warm. It is a stormy season. She caught the white goose by the leg. A goose, 'twas no great matter. The goose let fall a golden egg, with cackle and with clatter. She dropped the goose and caught the pelf and ran to tell her neighbours, and blessed herself and cursed herself, and rested from her labours. And feeding high and living soft grew plump and able-bodied, until the grave church warden doffed, the parson smirked and nodded. So sitting served by man and maid, she felt her heart grow prouder. But the more the white goose laid, it clacked and cackled louder. It cluttered here, it chuckled there, it stirred the old wife's mettle. She shifted in her elbow chair and hurled the pan and kettle. A quincy choke thy cursed note! Then waxed her anger stronger. Go, take the goose and wring her throat, I will not bear it longer. Then yelped the cur and yawled the cat, ran Gaffer, stumbled Gamma. The goose flew this way and flew that, and filled the house with clamour. As head and heels upon the floor they floundered all together, there strode a stranger to the door, and it was windy weather. He took the goose upon his arm, he uttered words of scorning. So keep you cold or keep you warm, it is a stormy morning. The wild wind rang from park and plain, and round the attics rumbled, till all the tables danced again, and half the chimneys tumbled. The glass blew in, the fire blew out, the blast was hard and harder. Her cap blew off, her gown blew up, and a whirlwind cleared the larder. And while on all sides breaking loose, her household fled the danger, quoth she, the devil take the goose, and God forget the stranger. And that was The Goose by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Another poem done. We're getting through quite a few today. But not a lot of visitors today. I happen to know for a fact that a number of my regular visitors are travelling today. Interplanetary travel being what it is, it makes it a little bit difficult for them to tune in. So we'll just keep going with our company as it stands. And should anybody be lurking out there today, feel free to drop me a request. Feel free to drop me a request.
Deep thought here. I'd like to make another request.
Oh yes? What would you like to hear, Deep Thought?
I'd like to hear Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Well, okay, we can do that one. Here comes Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas wrote Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night in 1951. He wrote it for his father, who was dying at the time, And it was a plea to him to fight against disease and death and not go gently into the dark. We can see whoops. I have to remember to switch into the scene. We can see an illustration here of Dylan Thomas that I put together, as well as some art of an old man shaking his fist at the setting sun, which seemed to me to be appropriate for this poem. While I'm doing this poem, feel free to add a couple more poems to the list. It's possible we may have time to finish the A.A. Milne repertoire for today. So if Tim Tam, you felt like putting those in, I'd be very grateful. And here is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning they, do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on that sad height, curse bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And that was Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. A request for Deep Thought. Deep Thought, the intelligence floating in space, pure consciousness. Let's head on back and see if there are any other poems requested. Here we go. More poems. Disobedience. Oh, we've already done disobedience today, haven't we? No, we haven't. We haven't done disobedience. Disobedience, another poem by A.A. Milne. May as well add in King John's Christmas and the Knight Whose Armour Didn't Squeak, because I think that's all we will have time for today, and it would be great to get A.A. Milne into the list before the day's over. Get the rest of A.A. Milne into the list. So here is Disobedience by A.A. Milne. And we'll just take a quick look. There's some art that I prepared. That is the mother of James Morrison Weatherby George Dupree, the subject of this very poem. Oops, I have accidentally clicked on the wrong button. There we go. James Morrison Weatherby George Dupree took great care of his mother, though he was only 3. James said to his mother, "Mother," he said he, "you must never go down to the end of the town if you don't go down with me." James Morrison's mother put on a golden gown. James Morrison's mother drove to the end of the town. James Morrison's mother said to herself, said she, I can get right down to the end of the town and be back in time for tea. King John put up a notice, lost or stolen or strayed. James Morrison's mother seems to have been mislaid. Last seen wandering vaguely, quite of her own accord. She tried to get down to the end of the town, 40 shillings reward. James Morrison, commonly known as Jim, told his other relations not to go blaming him. James said to his mother, "Mother," he said he, "you must never go down to the end of the town without consulting me." James Morrison's mother hasn't been heard of since. King John said he was sorry, so did the Queen and Prince. King John, somebody told me, said to a man he knew, "If people go down to the end of the town, well, what can anyone do?" JJMM WG to P took great COism, though he was only 3. JJ said to his M, he said he, "You must never go down to the end of the town if you don't go down with me." And that was Disobedience by A. Milne. Not sure quite what happened just then. There we go. What else do we have in the list? Yes, we have King John's Christmas and The Knight Whose Armour Didn't Squeak. So let's start. I think we'll start in reverse order. I think we'll do The Knight Whose Armour Didn't Squeak first. The Knight Whose Armour Didn't Squeak by A. Milne. Written in 1927. And we'll zoom in on the artwork there. My depiction of the knight whose armour didn't squeak. Of all the knights of Appledore, the wisest was Sir Thomas Thom. He multiplied as far as 4 and knew what 9 was taken from. To make 11, he could write a letter to another knight. No other knight in all the land could do the things which he could do. Not only did he understand the way to polish swords, but knew what remedy a knight should seek whose armour had begun to squeak. And if he didn't fight too much, it wasn't that he didn't care for blips and buffetings and such, but felt that it was hardly fair to risk by frequent injuries a brain as delicate as his. His castle, Castle Tom, was set conveniently on a hill, and daily when it wasn't wet he paced the battlements until some smaller knight who couldn't swim should reach the moat and challenge him. Or sometimes, feeling full of fight, he hurried out to scour the plain, and seeing some approaching knight, he either hurried home again or hid, and when the foe was past, blew a triumphant trumpet blast. One day when good Sir Thomas Thom was resting in a handy ditch, the noises he was hiding from, though very much the noises which he'd always hidden from before, seemed somehow less, or was it more? The trotting horse, the trumpet's blast, the whistling sword, the armour's squeak, These, and especially the last, had clattered by him all the week. Was this the same, or was it not? Something was different, but what? Sir Thomas raised a cautious ear and listened as Sir Hugh went by. And suddenly he seemed to hear, or not to hear, the reason why this stranger made a nicer sound than other knights who lived around. Sir Thomas watched the way he went. His rage was such he couldn't speak. For years they'd called him down in Kent the knight whose armour didn't squeak. Yet here and now he looked upon another knight whose squeak was gone. He rushed to where his horse was tied. He spurred it to a rapid trot. The only fear he felt inside about his enemy was not how sharp his sword, how stout his heart, but has he got too long a start? Sir Hugh was singing hand on hip when something sudden came along and caught him a terrific blip right in the middle of his song. A thunderstorm? He thought, of course, and toppled gently off his horse. Then said the good Sir Thomas Thom, dismounting with a friendly air, "Allow me to extract you from the heavy armour that you wear. At times like these, the bravest knight may find his armour much too tight." 100 yards or so beyond the scene of brave Sir Hugh's defeat, Sir Thomas found a useful pond, and careful not to wet his feet, he brought the armour to the brink and flung it in and watched it sink. So ever after, more and more, the men of Kent would proudly speak of Thomas Thom of Appledore, the knight whose armour didn't squeak, while Hugh, the knight who gave him best, squeaks just as badly as the rest. And that was The Knight Whose Armour Didn't Squeak by A. Milne for Tim Tam, my long-suffering mod who has been doing a great job today. And back we go. We have just one last poem for today, which is good. One last poem to get through. We're going to do King John's Christmas.
Excuse me, boss.
Yes, what's up? This isn't another knock-knock joke, is it?
No, I just thought I should tell you we're approaching the Krell borders, and it's never a good idea to get too close to the Empire of Krell.
Okay, thanks for that. Well, we'll just get through this one last poem, and then I'll head to the bridge to set some new, safer coordinates. Okay. What is our last poem? Our last poem is King John's Christmas. So here we go with our last poem of the day, written in 1927 by A. Milne. Therein you can see a picture of King John that I put together for today's to accompany the poem. Not necessarily today. This one I did a little while ago. And here it is, King John's Christmas. King John was not a good man. He had his little ways, and sometimes no one spoke to him for days and days and days. And men who came across him when walking in the town gave him a supercilious stare or passed with noses in the air, and bad King John stood dumbly there, blushing beneath his crown. King John was not a good man, and no good friends had he. He stayed in every afternoon, but no one came to tea, and round about December the cards upon his shelf, which wished him lots of Christmas cheer and fortune in the coming year, were never from his near and dear, but only from himself. King John was not a good man, yet had his hopes and fears. They'd given him no present now for years and years and years. But every year at Christmas, while minstrels stood about, collecting tribute from the young, for all the songs they might have sung, he stole away upstairs and hung a hopeful stocking out. King John was not a good man, he lived his life aloof. Alone he thought a message out while climbing up the roof. He wrote it down and propped it against the chimney stack, to all and sundry near and far, F. Christmas in particular, and signed it not Johannes R., but very humbly Jack. I want some crackers and I want some candy. I think a box of chocolates would come in handy. I don't mind oranges, I do like nuts, and I should like a pocket knife that really cuts. And oh, Father Christmas, if you love me at all, bring me a big red India rubber ball. King John was not a good man. He wrote this message out and gat him to his room again, descending by the spout. And all that night he lay there, a prey to hopes and fears. I think that's him a-coming now. Anxiety bedewed his brow. He'll bring one present anyhow, the first I've had in years. Forget about the crackers and forget the candy. I'm sure a box of chocolates would never come in handy. I don't like oranges, I don't want nuts, and I have got a pocket knife that almost cuts. But oh, Father Christmas, if you love me at all, bring me a big red India rubber ball. King John was not a good man. Next morning when the sun rose up to tell a waiting world that Christmas had begun, the people seized their stockings and opened them with glee, and Christmas toys and games appeared, and lips with sticky sweets were smeared. King John said grimly, "As I feared, nothing again for me." I did want crackers and I did want candy. I know a box of chocolates would come in handy. I do love oranges. I did want nuts. And oh, if Father Christmas had loved me at all, he would have brought a big red India rubber ball. King John stood by the window and frowned to see below the happy bands of boys and girls all playing in the snow. A while he stood there watching and envying them all, when through the window, big and red, there hurtled by his royal head and bounced and fell upon the bed an India rubber ball. And oh, Father Christmas, my blessings on you fall for bringing him a big red India rubber ball. And that was King John's Christmas by A. Milne. The last of our poems for today. And it has been wonderful having your company today. Nice to have seen in the background there, Frog 111222. We've been a little short on visitors today, as I know that a number of my regulars are travelling today. But thank you to everybody who has turned up, and if you have been lurking there in the background, I appreciate that as well. It's always... Oh, hang on, what's going on? Looks like we've got some company.
Hello, last human being alive. I am from the Krell Empire.
Oh dear, this could be trouble.
You have been practicing poetry without a license in and around the borders of the Krell Empire. I am placing you under arrest.
Under arrest? This is ridiculous. I'm not even inside the Krell Empire. We're just skirting the borders a little bit.
Please resist. I have been authorized to use lethal force.
Okay, folks, I think I'm in a little bit of trouble here. But come back next week, 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, for more poems, possibly some more knock-knock jokes, possibly some puns. And have yourselves a good week. I think I'll need to go and take care of this emissary from the Krell Empire. Jumped up little bureaucrat that he sounds like he is. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and I will just display our credits for the moment. And goodbye to all.